behavioral and cognitive behavioral treatments are the best ones for anxiety disorders. But the cognitive behavioral and the behavioral techniques, those are tools a person can take with them forever, that they can draw upon those. This is where, for example, a person will say, I only get 8 to 10 sessions in my insurance. That's okay. If ever there was a set of disorders that could potentially be managed through 8 to 10 sessions, sometimes it is the anxiety disorders.
Dr. Ramani, can anxiety disorders be cured?
Let me put it this way. Anxiety disorders are the most eminently treatable of all of the mental illnesses. They have the best outcomes. You really can do well with anxiety disorders. They're a tough nut to crack, but the techniques we use in treating anxiety disorders are techniques where you can give the client the tools to take home with them, and then they can pull upon them for many, many years. So I have to say that the outcome literature, the evidence base for anxiety disorders is really strong. They're treatable.
It's really good to hear that. In episode 1, we mentioned that 40 million people, it's the most diagnosed in the United States. So it's super prevalent, super easy to treat.
Yep. I'm not going to say easy. It needs to be treated. It requires consistency and it requires commitment. It's not like it's not like having like a mole removed and my mole is gone.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's a lifelong commitment. People who are anxious are anxious. They tend to be anxious for a lifetime. We're just giving them alternate strategies.
Yes.
Yeah.
A new way of thinking.
A new way of thinking.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If you have not watched the episode where Dr. Ramani talks about how anxiety disorder is just a disorder in thinking, we will link to it. It's been one of the biggest takeaways for me. I mean, that already alone has improved my life. So make sure you watch that. What type of treatments are available for anxiety disorder?
There's a range, and by and large, literature shows, almost without exception, behavioral and cognitive behavioral treatments are the best ones for anxiety disorders. Sometimes the treatments are combined with pharmacologic treatments, but the medications used to manage anxiety disorders are often designed for more short-term use. But the cognitive behavioral and the behavioral techniques, those are tools a person can take with them forever, that they can draw upon those. In addition, there's a variety of other techniques, stress management techniques, mindfulness meditation, things that involve exercise. But for example, people with anxiety disorders often don't do well with intense aerobic exercise because the breathing sets off that anxiety loop. So things that are more low impact, like yoga, sometimes even lifting, being outdoors, that kind of stuff. Those things can be great coping tools that you give a person. Getting enough sleep. People with anxiety disorders often do have disrupted sleep. So trying to get people onto a more normalized sleep cycle can make a difference. More and more, there's some really excellent apps out there that people can use to monitor their anxiety, give them techniques to use when they're responding to anxiety, think of new ways to think about situations. So technology has certainly come on the scene to help with a lot of that too. But then finally, it's really about making people more informed citizens. We live in very anxiety-inducing times. So I feel that so many times we're giving people tools and techniques to be able to cope with a rather dysfunctional world. So what that means is you need to be a better consumer of our dysfunctional world. Watch your social media use and your social comparison in that space. If you're wasting a lot of time there, how come she has this, or how come she looks like that, or how come he's doing that? That can also foster things like anxiety disorders. Our 24-hour news cycles, those are taking a real toll on people. Absolutely. And so you got to tune out for a little while. Like, it's about you. Nowadays, the onus is on the people who live in the world to make the choices to make the world more palatable. It's easy to get lost in the scrolling and the tech of it all. Spend some time with real human beings. Those kinds of interactions can be very soothing. So I do think we need to raise and become more informed citizens in a more challenging world. Otherwise, we can feel like we're constantly being assailed by messages and images and polarization, and that sort of stuff makes us more anxious.
What I love about you, and you've provided this over and over again through all of our series, is that the solutions are available to the people. We don't have to rely on anybody else. We can do it ourselves.
You got it yourself.
And as long as we're getting that right education and getting informed.
I agree. And then that's where therapy becomes key, because this is where, for example, a person will say, I only get 8 to 10 sessions in my insurance. That's okay. If ever there was a set of disorders that could potentially be managed through 8 to 10 sessions, sometimes it is the anxiety disorders. Disorders like phobias require a very specific form of treatment, and sometimes you have to go to a specific clinical setting. The gold standard treatment of choice there is something called exposure with response prevention. So you actually get exposed to the thing that you're afraid of, but then you're not allowed to run away or do whatever your usual thing is. Like you have to endure the flight, or you have to pet the dog, or whatever it is. You have to drive over the bridge. Like you have to get through it. And even as you're sweating and feel like you're having a panic attack, you're with the therapist. You're not doing it alone.
Right.
And you do that a few times. So some of these things do require a bit more structure. And then a lot of it too is coping skills, like giving people new ways of thinking. We push back on how a person thinks. They'll say, I'm always going to be alone and unhappy, and I'm worried about that. Always? As soon as I hear the word always, I'm like, slow down, sister. There's no alwayses, and the only never we've got is you're going to die, but not soon, I hope. So when people use that kind of extreme terminology, always, never, forever, we call them on those terms, and we catch them in their irrational patterns of thinking. They're the theorists in the field like Aaron Beck and Albert Ellis. They talk a lot about these irrational thought patterns we have, and that once we identify them, we teach a person, say, really, no one's ever loved you? You know, it's interesting, about 2 weeks ago you were telling me, and you almost kind of like you're playing with them a little bit, and they're like, okay, doctor, you're right. And so, but that game playing, if you will, you're trying to give them that technique to push back on their thinking, to teach them new ways of thinking. And that way, a psychologist is like a personal trainer. You're lifting the weights wrong. You're thinking wrong. Let's find a new way to do it.
I know it's not, but it sounds so easy.
It's not easy, though, because if you're convinced that there's a tiger outside the door, there's not much I can tell you otherwise. And you're like, you know what? You need to shut up. There's a tiger out that door. What are you nuts? We're both going to get eaten, kind of thing.
Just to play devil's advocate, don't you think some people know that that dog isn't going to hurt them, but they're still just afraid of it?
I'm not convinced that they know that it's not going to hurt them. I think that they truly are afraid of it, that they're responding to their physiology. That's what an anxiety disorder is. Letting your physiology sort of, which is being irrational in some ways, run the show. And you have to let your thinking override that. Yeah. So think of anything you've ever been afraid of. You had to talk yourself through it, whether you were jumping with a parachute or I'm a scuba diver. So for me, I'm like, what am I doing? And it's like, I'm going to be fine. And then it would be fine. So all things being equal, that you're not putting yourself in a genuinely unsafe situation, that your physiology is saying, don't do it, don't do it. And then you have to talk yourself through it. Your mind's saying, no, this is going to be okay. Because when our heart's racing, when we feel dizzy, our tendency is to want to leave the situation. Treatment of anxiety disorders in some ways is like going into the abyss and facing your fear. And then you find out the abyss is actually pretty well lit.
Yeah.
So it's not bad.
Dealing with those metaphors.
So
treating anxiety is like going into the abyss and then realizing the abyss is pretty well lit.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
And there's comfortable chairs in there too, so you're good.
And they're red couches.
Yeah, so
we're in the abyss.
That's great. We're in the abyss.
Yeah. It's great to be in the abyss with you.
If you like psychology and learning about mental health and want to learn more while meeting other people who are interested, explore your membership options using the link below this video or visit MedCircle.com.
Especially in Los Angeles, but even more everywhere, I feel like there are so many non-credentialed fads of treatment out there. Explain to me what you're seeing.
Kyle, I'm so glad you brought that up, because especially when it comes to any form of mental illness, a lot of people want something that works fast and is magical. It's just going to take away these feelings and thoughts, because anxiety is it overtakes you. It feels awful. You want it to go away. Somebody says, drink this tea and you'll be just fine, or eat this herb or whatever it is, this concoction, and it'll all go away. Listen, I wish that was true. And if it has a placebo effect, bravo, as long as it's not dangerous for you, great. My concern becomes this, it's twofold. Number one, if a person takes one of these sort of unproven cures and doesn't get better, they may blame themselves. Say, see, it's so bad for me and I'm so damaged, I'm never going to get better. And that attribution, which an anxious person is more prone to, that definitely concerns me. Number two, If a person takes one of these sort of untested cures and they get better, they may think it was entirely the cure and that they didn't do any of the mental heavy lifting. And the key with anxiety is that it's all a head game. It's an inside game. It's an inside job. You can do this. This is how you're thinking. But if you think, no, it's the super magic tea I drank, then you stop thinking. You take that control, put it outside of yourself again, and that's what anxiety is about. Often this idea that you're being controlled from the outside in. So you make the attribution, I didn't do anything, it was the magic tea.
Or if you have to drink the magic tea every morning and then you run out and now all of a sudden
you feel panicked again. Exactly. So I think that there's a time and a place, and I think I've had many clients who are embedded in therapy with me and they were doing all kinds of magical other things. When I was determined they were harmless, I said, how's about we play a game here? Would you give me 1 week without that? Just 1 week, try it. They were fine. And these magical things can also be very expensive. So I do worry for clients who might end up spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on unproven sorts of cures. Listen, go find the science. If this thing really works, there's often some good science on it. And if you can find that and you feel good about it and can talk to people who might have more knowledge, great. But, ensure that. And listen, are there Eastern medicines out there that are being used Ayurvedic cures, Chinese medicine? Sure. There is some research, not always tons, and some people find relief there. That's not my expertise, so I don't want to poo-poo that. Mm-hmm. But I want people to be clear that you did this.
Yeah, it's like you drove to New York. The car didn't drive you there. You still did the driving. The car might have helped you get there faster, but
that's
you
exactly
still did
right.
the work.
And the trick is in a disorder like an anxiety disorder where there are a lot of sorts of inaccurate or irrational thoughts, it's easy then to get caught up in the magic of it. It's like, this is this thing outside of me. And like you said, you can create more fear if you can't get the treatment.
Now, you don't have to share this if you don't want to, obviously, but when you say these people they're doing magical stuff, can you give an example of what that would be?
Herbs that someone gave them that they're convinced works, and there's really no science there, but they're spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars on it. It's things that just have been untested, but they're putting themselves out there financially, and then sometimes they're actually unwilling to participate in therapy. My concern would be if somebody went solely into the world of magic potions and then was not getting therapy, they would be missing that opportunity to learn those coping skills. Listen, Kyle, I'm not going to sit here and tell people how to spend their money. And if the thing is innocuous, basically they're just drinking a glorified cup of tea, but they're also getting good therapy, any port in the storm. But I don't want them to lose hey, I'm getting better. It must be the tea, and it's not the hard work that they're doing in therapy. That's the real risk.
How does having a co-occurring disorder affect someone's treatment?
Now, anytime somebody has a co-occurring disorder, it's always going to make treatment more complicated because obviously then there's multiple treatment targets and there may be more acute issues from one thing than another. Something we've talked about on MedCircle before has been personality disorders. Mm-hmm. And personality disorders often have anxiety as part of them. Specifically, borderline personality disorder. Anxiety is very much a part of that picture. And it can be almost at the level of terror. So you're managing both the clinical challenges of borderline personality disorder, but the person's having very real anxiety. In something like an eating disorder, where you're doing a lot of the nutritional guidance and addressing the body image issues, there's also a lot of anxiety about food and anxiety about weight gain. So you're dealing with these issues maybe embedded in another context, but you also may be trying to get a person medically stabilized, or there's other thoughts out there. They have depression and they have lots of rumination, and that's overlapping with the anxiety. So it just makes it more challenging. You may also have cases where a person has anxiety and they have a substance use disorder, and that's what's keeping them in the game with the drugs, because by using drugs, it takes the anxiety away. So whatever that, and you typically see that with drugs like marijuana, alcohol, drugs that act more as depressants. Mm-hmm. Those help people address, at least temporarily, anxiety, but that's not a long-term fix.
Right.
And what it's doing is it's not addressing the anxiety, it's masking it for that period of time. So there is a real risk of getting overly dependent on any variety of drugs and alcohol as a way of managing anxiety or ongoing tobacco use or any of those things.
And those treatments, if somebody has co-occurring disorders, we treat it all.
We treat it all.
We never just go, first we're going to tackle the anxiety, then we do it all.
It's not in order, because the anxiety may make engagement in treatment difficult. It might make people more obsessive about something, so it's harder to sort of break through. So you're addressing those things at all times. So you're really, but there may be things that are very acute. If you have a client, for example, who's suicidal,
yes,
our main focus is going to be safety. If you have a client who is anorexia nervosa, that person's going to be in inpatient treatment. We're trying to get their weight stabilized. So obviously, when we're looking at dangerous patterns, we're going to stabilize those immediately. But when we're looking at numerous issues in somebody who's getting outpatient therapy, we're dealing with all of it simultaneously because it's all related. It's all related.
Yes.
Yeah.
What resources are available for someone to find the right treatment?
As always, I mean, finding good treatment is always challenging for people. They're often sort of at the mercy of going down their insurance list and not knowing who's who. You can sometimes ask whoever your primary healthcare practitioner is if they have any recommendations. Ask people you know if you feel comfortable doing that. I have to say there's some really nice workbooks out there. So if you get into therapy, there's one book in particular called the Stress and Anxiety Workbook. It's something I've assigned to my clients. There's lots of really nice exercises in there to sort of monitor and sort of stay on top of your symptomatology and all of that. Therapists who work in a cognitive behavioral model with clients with anxiety disorders often assign homework. They ask people to track certain things week to week. So that can show you change over time. And then I think that finding other adjuncts that are meaningful to you, not instead of treatment, but whether that is a mindful meditation course or a yoga course that might be focused on anxiety, that kind of thing, that those things could be a useful adjunct. But I do think that therapy is an important place to start. If you're already working with a therapist, obviously, you have in the past and you like them, circle back there, but then ask around, see who's being recommended. And then there are sometimes clinics and programs focus solely on anxiety disorders. Like, for example, here in Los Angeles at UCLA, they have an anxiety disorder center, some world-class people who focus on anxiety. So that becomes an expertise of that center. And there's some places around the country where that anxiety is their focus, and they get in and they really focus on the problem specifically.